I'm Darby. I'm joined by some other youth governors from across the country, and we're just going to talk about how our states kind of view politics and the young people engaged within it. So if you all want to introduce yourselves, you can go in any order. It doesn't matter to me.
All right, I'll nab it first. So I'm Zach Donaldson, and I'm the youth governor of Pennsylvania.
I'm Freshie Martin, and I'm the youth governor of Indiana.
I'm Alec Palm, and I'm the youth governor of Oregon.
And I'm Ryan Branco, and I'm the youth governor of Alabama.
Awesome. So my main thing that I want to talk about is just kind of, I tried to pick people who were from different regions within the country just to see kind of how that changes based on how like older generations and just the general public view young people involved in politics. So stepping away from like your state's view for right now, how do just people around you kind of view whenever they hear that you all are involved in like youth and government and you're doing a lot of work in your community? So how do they kind of see you all?
Do you want to go in the order that we introduce ourselves? I think that would be easiest.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag for me. My specific state representative, Daryl Metcalf, is not representative of most people. Not my favorite human being in the world, but overall, I generally get a pretty positive reception and reaction from adults. And a lot of the times when I go into the details of how we'll work out legislation and debate in our program, they're like, well, you're doing it better than the adults, because I think there's a bit more reverence and respect when the youth do it. So
I probably have the opposite experience. So I do a lot of youth-led organizations in my own area. So like outside of youth and government, I also started like a youth city council in my area, and that's been really difficult just on a communication factors with people, because for one, it's difficult to like put students, especially in my area where students have never had power before, have never been able to raise their voices. Like I had a student come up to me and they said that they were actually afraid of our school corporation, because it's like a known thing that you cannot say anything about our school corporation without getting like reprimanded in some way. So now giving them this power, and I'm like, you can speak up, like you can't say something. They're like almost afraid to use it. And it also doesn't help in the aspect that I feel like half the time, like whenever we're invited to events or like we're told that we can submit opinions or can like give a speech or something like that, it feels as if though we're not really being heard. Like we're up there and we're talking, but we're not actually like being actively heard. We're more of like just a media opportunity. Like, oh, snap some pictures, it'll look nice in the newspaper. Okay, now get out. So that's my experience.
And then personally, my experience, I live in a larger population center, living in the state capital. And it's really nice that I have like the ease of access to the legislature. I get calls from my senator and representative all the time. They're both really open. My senator and representative were both former youth governors. So it's actually really awesome. Everyone's really connected. And I'm always able to put input into state legislation and local legislation. So yeah, in Oregon, we're pretty progressive in our youth mindset.
Yeah, just personally, I think I kind of have a mix of both, because personally, again, living in the state capital, I have a lot of access to like where the legislative process happens and that kind of stuff. I will say, there isn't much involvement from the only thing that I can say is I met Doug Jones once and he shook my hand and he walked away. And I met the governor, and she was of course supportive of the program, but also it was kind of like, this is a reoccurring mood that I feel projected towards the entire program. It's like, oh, that's so cool, but y'all are kids and it doesn't matter. And that's kind of like the mood that gets thrown at us. But at the same time, when we walk in a room, we probably know more about the current issues in Alabama than the actual legislators do. And I mean, it's a hard thing to do, because we're trying to gain respect from all of these individuals that we want to be one day. And it's really discouraging to see that they just think that we're kids and that we don't know what's going on. But I mean, at the same time, the YMCA is like an amazing program that has a lot of staff that supports us. And with that, they are very, very good and on our side. So
like Ryan, just what you were saying, like it really resonated with me. It almost feels as if sometimes people are looking down on us and they're just saying like, that's cute. Like that's the reoccurring thought I get. Like we're treated as like almost toddlers, and they're like, oh, that's cute, now get out of the way.
I think in Kentucky, you know, we like pride ourselves on hospitality and all of that. And, you know, my general experience with being a Kentuckian is like, we're very hospitable. Everyone is so nice to each other, but you just don't bring up politics. Like that's the thing. And so when they see young people kind of involved in like community service agencies and doing like service in the community, it's so accepted. Everyone loves it. You know, I do this service trip through the YMCA, and it's never hard to find donations for people to like sponsor you to go on the trip and help students get involved. But the moment you bring up that like, oh, well, maybe this election is important, or maybe we should be doing this instead, it's instantly like, you don't know what you're talking about. I feel like people in my state kind of see the separation between like helping marginalized communities and areas that need help and like the policy that can actually fix that long term. And they don't want to like bridge that gap and especially allow young people to do that. So I guess we've kind of already touched on it already, but like, obviously we're from different parts in the country, and like Alec has a very different perspective on youth engagement than we do. So how do we move forward? Like, what do we do in order to be taken more seriously, I guess? If we've already worked our way up in a huge youth and government program, what else can we do if we're still not being taken seriously?
This is a good question. I've noticed, I guess, kind of getting back to my region before I answer it, is since I'm in a more, I wouldn't say rural area, but I'm not close to like super close to a major city. I'm in the suburbs. I feel like there's a snootiness kind of directed at people trying to get involved in politics. As I mentioned kind of before with my state rep, I think the best thing we can do is it's so easy when having a political conversation with anyone to just want to attack. I kind of had that experience today on my Instagram, but you immediately put someone on the defense when you're doing that. I think kind of bringing down the temperature and having a more open discussion with someone, even if they're not treating you with respect, treat them with the respect you'd want them to treat you with. And I think you can kind of lower the temperature and come to some consensus. And I think if we act above our age, which I already believe we do, will be taken more seriously.
Kind of relating to what Zach said, we need to change our mindsets in a way that we're okay with being wrong. And that's not only saying that like youth need to be okay with being wrong, but like even adults need to be okay with being wrong, because it's not like an exaggeration to say that not everybody knows everything and not everybody's an expert on everything. And what's really difficult is sometimes like I might know more about a topic than an adult in the room does. So like if we're talking about like a school corporation, or if we're talking about like mental health of youth, like I should know more about that topic than an adult does in the room. Yeah, my views are automatically not taken into consideration just because I don't have that adult status, I guess. And like there's also moments where I'm in the wrong, and like so if somebody comes to me with like infrastructure policy, I'm not going to know what that is, and I'm not going to know all the ins and outs of it. And like there needs to be that mutual, I guess, vulnerability that you're not dumb or you're not any less respected or you don't have any less leadership for admitting like, hey, I don't know what this is, like I don't know what this topic is, I don't know what this concept is, or even saying, hey, I don't know how to move forward, and being able to like express that vulnerability and kind of use each other as a team instead of like leading this like one-man assault on politics, because politics is never a one-man game. I don't care if you're in youth and government politics or if you're in the world politics, it's never one person, it's a team. So you have to be able to like work together as that team.
Yeah, I can kind of add on to that. It's really kind of what Freshie said, is it's really all about, as long as you don't kind of like step out of line, so to speak, you don't like disagree with adults or instantly you're not taken seriously. Something comes to mind is this right before COVID, we were, and right when I was elected, the Oregon legislature was passing basically a doubling of the Oregon education budget. And it was all about Common Core. I'm like, and then I spoke up, I was like, this is not where the money needs to go to. And they're like, oh, well, look at all this data. This is what it needs. I'm like, not from my experiences. And, instantly when you step out of the supermajority party line, you're instantly shut down because you're 17 or 18. So you don't know what's going on.
Just kind of hitting a different point. I agree with you all completely. And I think this has been the harsh reality that I've come to recently. And it's really that the only thing that we can do is wait. Because at the current moment, in this climate especially, I really don't believe that there's anything that will change these people's minds. As you've seen, the government is and just all of the United States is so broken right now that I think people now more than ever are not willing to accept something new, especially youth trying to get involved in something that they see as only like 50 or older can make a difference. But I do think that it's very encouraging to see that there are young people starting to get involved, like the House of Representatives delegate that was 26, I think. I don't know, whatever he was. It's really just the harsh reality that we are the people who are going to have to change it. And it's going to be up to us to how we influence the younger people after us. Because, I don't really care what anybody says. I think that the government should be new and young people. Sure, I'm not ageist or anything. I don't think that old people shouldn't be allowed, but I think that because of the climate that we're in, young people are so discouraged to reach government positions that it's just reoccurring. That's why there's old dudes in the House of old men and women in the House of Representatives forever. So. But that's just me. I'm kind of hostile towards the point.
If I can jump in really quickly before we move on to the next one, just something I was thinking about when Ryan was talking. I think what would definitely contribute is the minute everyone turns 18 in this generation, they need to register to vote and hit the ballot box, because if we had like high levels of turnout, we would control pretty much every election. And I don't mean that in a powering way, but we legitimately have the raw numbers and voice to somewhat force. We have the bully pulpit of power to force older generations to listen to us and compromise with us. So I think an emphasis on being an active participant for, obviously we're all super involved, but for maybe our friends who aren't as interested is, not everyone's interested in politics, but it affects everyone's lives. So you have to have some base knowledge or base values to associate with it.
Yeah, and to just add on to what Zach said really quickly, I'm sorry. As somebody that worked for a voter registration organization over the summer and up until now, we're still working in Georgia, it seems it's really easy to just fall into the trap of thinking that youth are engaged, youth are posting on their Instagram, they're using their voices. Yeah, they're out there getting engaged. They're definitely going to vote. That is by no means the standards. I was, up until election day, walking students through, whether it was through DMs, whether it was in my own school, whether it was through other state calls, just trying to explain to students the basic principles of voting. Some of them didn't even know. Some of them had never even seen a ballot. Some of them didn't understand basic government terms, and they were almost too afraid to vote because they had no idea how to. And so it's we kind of assume that people know how to vote because it seems we talk about it every year. It seems like something so easy that then when there's somebody that doesn't really understand the process or doesn't understand their rights in the process, they're too afraid to speak up, because that is really intimidating to be the one person that is hey, I have no idea what's happening here. But I'm sad to say, but working in that realm, I realize that there's a lot more people like that than you might think. So it's really important to just reach out, even if you think people understand what's happening, just double check.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think, Zach was talking about how not to be power hungry, but we could change elections if we wanted to. I don't even think it's power hungry. I think if we have the numbers, we have the potential to influence elections. And if we have that majority, then why aren't we being more engaged? So I guess what I want to talk about now is, why is it important? Because I know in my experience, I've lost a lot of relationships. I lost a lot of friends and connections with family members and anything just because I want to have a voice in politics. I think it's important. And so it's really discouraging. I think that's why a lot of people are turned away from voting and, getting involved, because they see it as a way to lose relationships. So why is it important, despite all the hardships that could come from it? Why should youth still be passionate about democracy?
So I'll answer it in two parts. One is I like the point you brought up about kind of losing relationships. I've been lucky enough to not have that experience, but I know several of my friends have. I think one of the problems today is we have people operating on two different set of facts, and it's impossible to come to a consensus if someone's construed in their own reality and someone else is construed in their other one. So I think one of the first things as a generation we need to do is teach media literacy. I think people need to become more intelligent consumers of news and information, because I think if we all operate on the same set of facts, and we all try to get educated at that level and help our friends and family get educated on that level, not change their views, but just ensure that they're intaking not junk food conspiracy theories, but, solid information. I think that's how we base more cogent and more respectable opinions. And it's important that we're involved because government matters. Government does change things, and it's frustrating to see that people are like, well, my one vote will not change anything. Georgia was like this close, along with several other states, in the presidential election. And I liked an article my Gov teacher passed out. There are literal statewide elections in this country in the past that have been decided by one vote. So, yeah, at the grand scheme of things, the probability that your one vote is going to entirely flip election is low, but it absolutely adds up. And it's important that it's not a strenuous process to vote, and it shouldn't be a strenuous process to vote. It's important that people exercise that right.
Yeah. To kind of take it in a different route, just dealing with it personally, how to kind of motivate yourself to keep going and to stay passionate about whatever drove you to, whether it's politics, advocacy, or nonprofit work. I know we have a lot of Y kids, or just government, and you just like being a government spirit. It's really difficult, and I find even myself some days I wake up and I'm like, why am I doing this? I feel like I'm killing myself, every day, in and out, just constant arguments with people, because I do not live in a community where it's really open-minded. Even in my own house, I regularly get yelled at or bullied for my opinions, and it can be difficult. But what keeps bringing me back to I keep wanting to do this, I'm so passionate about this, is just looking around me and realizing all the people that I am affecting. So a lot of people see it such as these big elections, and you can only impact what's happening on a national level, but just the work that I've done in my community, such as with the youth city council that I helped create, that didn't happen overnight. That was a ton of me sending Facebook messages, clouding up emails, keep knocking down people's doors, showing up at city council meetings until they listened to me. And that was difficult because I faced a lot of rejection in that. But now where I'm sitting in this position, and I've helped create this council that can then go on for generations, that's what makes me keep doing it, because I just set up a pathway for me and my team. It wasn't just a one-man job, like I said before, but there's now a pathway for students in my community to always be able to share their voice. Whether people want to hear it or not, they have now a route to share their voice. And just thinking of that impact that I had on my community, that's what keeps pushing me. So just finding your passion and how you can help your community with that is just start on the local level, start with a friend, and just keep going from there.
Yeah, I know in Oregon, one of the biggest problems that we've faced, and one of my big things I've been trying to do as governor is I like to call the follow through, because especially in Oregon, it's very trendy to be liberal. It's called, I call it Instagram advocacy. You repost the little thing on Instagram and all of a sudden you're cool, and everyone reposts you. But it's the follow through, because we actually did a poll and only 9% of students that were eligible to vote that posted those things actually voted in the state of Oregon. We had our local newspaper that did a poll. And so it's more than being trendy. Is you need to help get the information out on why this is so important, because Oregon especially is very polarized in a sense, whereas the left is very dominant, the progressive left. where they don't even send bills to the Republicans anymore. They just vote on bills they've never seen. And so you're either very liberal or you're very conservative, and there's very little room to be in between. I know I am socially left, but fiscally conservative, and that's just, in most cases, not really acceptable. So it's like, it's okay to be moderate. It's okay not to take a party stance on everything. That's one thing that I've really tried to work on. And I think it's important just for the future of this country, is it's okay not to be a Republican. And it's okay not to be a Democrat, and your views can shift one way or another. So just because you support this candidate doesn't mean you support everything they do. They're just the better of however many options. And I think that's like one of the big things in families and students. And yeah.
I'll say, I mean, obviously, when you're a teenager in high school, there's a lot of things that is going on. And when you're a senior about to be able to vote, if you can vote during your senior year, there's a lot of changes happening. Change is kind of the theme of that time of your life. When you're 18, you're looking for colleges, changing in scenery and states if you're going to a different college. And I think something that was very discouraging for me personally is that in my government class this year, we did a poll or kind of like a test to see what parties we were in. And I did not know that the teacher was going to post them on the smart board after the test, but the results were put up. And it's crazy to see how my friends looked at me after they found out that I was not as far right as all of them were. I mean, being barely a Republican up because there was like a little bar graph and you were either way over here or way over here, and me being barely a Republican, like this much. I mean, it's just crazy how the climate changed so quickly. And I think that that's something that's very discouraging for people to get involved. But I think that the main thing is like, it's okay for people to disagree with you. And I think that that's the most amazing part of youth in government, is that you get used to people disagreeing with you. And I mean, at first, as a new voter and somebody that's just coming into politics, I cannot imagine how discouraging that could be without being exposed to that beforehand. And so I just think that when that climate starts to change and people are more accepting, and you see that they are, I mean, over the past decade, people have grown in, especially Generation Z. I think that we've done a great job of like growing and understanding what people are going through. But it's so important to be involved in government, because all these things that we complain about every day, that we want change, that we want, I mean, new laws, we think somebody's doing something wrong. Okay, but what now? Like, okay, you can complain, but I want you to go do something about it. I want you to get out. I want you to get encouraged. Use that as your encouragement and go make a change. Even if you don't talk about it publicly, you're not the youth governor of a state. I mean, me being the youth governor and you being a simple voter, we have the same power in this state. We have the same influence under our constitutional right. And I just think that people just need to be encouraged, because the media is doing such a terrible job of encouraging young people and telling them to get involved and that their opinion matters. So that's just me.
Yeah. I guess my perspective from Kentucky is I kind of see like, if my generation doesn't do it, then who is? Because we see, I mean, we've had Mitch McConnell as our senator for way before my lifetime. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of our representatives. And if they haven't done the issues that my generation is finding important, the issues that are going to define the rest of our lives, then who is going to do it? So that's why I think it's important for the youth to be engaged, because if we keep complaining and be Instagram activists, like you all have said, then we are going to end up exactly like the generation that we swore we would never become. So yeah, I want to value your all's time. Thank you all so much for doing this. Go out and vote, get engaged, find your passion, and yeah, bye.